Got on this computer. Admit. Right, so welcome. Just to quickly reintroduce Nazmeera because I was not recording. So, Nazmeera being the founder of Happy Minds, mashallah, in South Africa, an organization dedicated to the development of people. She is also an NLP, neuro linguistic practitioner, a psychometrist, counselor, life coach, and an advanced TEFL linguist. TEFL being teaching English as a foreign language, and she works with children. So, yes, a perfect topic for this Saturday, stimulating a wellness mindset in children. We've all been talking so much, mashallah, about wellness in the year 2020. 2020 seriously has been the year of focusing on wellness, on immune boosting, on mental health, on everything that's necessary to survive a pandemic, from the physical to the emotional to the spiritual. And how can we forget the most important part of the society, which is the children and the next generation? Chances are pandemics will come repeatedly in the future. This time that our children are living through is something that we didn't live through. We cannot go back into our past, most of us on this call, even if you're 80 years old today. In the last 80 years, there weren't huge pandemics of this nature that we could reflect on and say, I know what that feels like and I know how it affected me. We simply don't, because the last major one was in the early part of the 20th century, and we were not alive then. So, but our children are living through a pandemic. How can we use this um, unforeseen and unfortunate circumstance to benefit them, to boost them for the future in terms of what they will contribute to society, and in terms of what types of personal growth they will experience and pursue in their lives, as well as the development that they will be able to give to their siblings and their children and their spouses one day. So, how can we use this? How can we capitalize on a pandemic to stimulate a wellness mindset? So, really, really something really fresh topic. Nobody's talking about such a thing. And of course, we bring it to you first on Coach Middle East. So, Alhamdulillah, I'm going to give our esteemed guest, Nazmeera, co sharing, Nazmeera, and you will now be able to take it away on your side with your presentation. And welcome, a hearty, hearty welcome, Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah, Atiyya. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be part of a presentation for Coach Middle East. It's always something that I've wanted to do, and finally it's here.
You need to accept and then you can screen share.
I've accepted.
Right, now you just press the green button. I know you're new to Zoom. You're
There we
using the
go.
other platforms. Okay.
Got it?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Excellent. Shall I begin?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay, so in terms of myself, just a quick introduction. My name is Nazmeera Mohammed Aboo Ismail, and I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I own a small company called Happy Minds, and we specialize in counseling services, psychometric services, career guidance, NLP coaching. Most of the time, we focus with children in terms of child counseling, with a focus to stimulating them into a better environment. And today we're going to be talking about how to stimulate a wellness mindset among children, not only in South Africa, but children in general follow the same developmental structure from birth until they go into young childhood and then middle childhood into teenagers. If we look at the structure for today, we're going to talk about what exactly is wellness among children and then focus on the broad aspect of holistic development. We're also going to talk about six petals that interlink holistic development. And then lastly, how we are going to foster the development of these six petals to ensure that the child has developed holistically, which will in turn lead to mental wellness. Can everybody hear me? Is everything clear so far?
Wonderful. You've got good sound quality, Alhamdulillah.
Sorry, I'm not sure if my baby is crying in the background is disturbing anyone.
No, we can't hear the baby, but if you want to check up on the baby, you're more than welcome to.
No, no, no. He's got enough caretakers for today, but sometimes he can just be a little bit demanding. Okay. So when we're talking about wellness in terms of general wellness, we always talk about our mindset. Now, in general, when we talk about a mindset, it leads onto two poles: a positive mindset and a negative mindset. If you're going to have a positive mindset, that means that come no matter what, a good event or a bad event, you're always going to look at it in the perspective of positivity, which means even if it's something bad, you're going to look for the good in this particular experience. Okay. And when we're talking about a negative wellness mindset, of course, we're talking about it being negative in every aspect. Something good, you look for a little bad in it. Something bad, you will see the worst in it. So when we talk about mindset, it's like I said, it's moved into two sections: positive or negative. It's also our mental attitude that determines how we perceive, how we experience this kind of stimuli from the environment, how we interpret it in terms of transforming and transferring the information in our brain, and as a result, how we respond to that particular stimuli or experiences that we have received from the environment. When we talk about a mindset, it also allows us to decide which resources we have available at our disposal and which ones we make use of. Also, how we're going to make use of these resources that are available to promote and foster healthy development. As an individual, as a human being, it is really important that we develop in a positive manner. So, as every cycle goes, you start at the bottom and then you build till you reach the top. And that is what wellness is: to build on, to develop one above the other. I'm going to open a slide which shows the 6 petals of holistic development. It's very important to note that these 6 petals of holistic development are all interrelated in some way to each other. Just like a normal hierarchy, you will start off with physical development, build onto the build onto the social domain, and then onto the emotional and intellectual domain, which will then lead us to the moral domain, which is how we behave in society in general. Any questions so far about the holistic development or the petals? I'm going to open the chat box for any messages.
Yes, please feel free, guys. I love how you've put the development into the petals instead of a hierarchy. You know, these little diagrams make such a huge difference when working with children. And if any of you guys on the call are coaches already, when you are talking to a parent, just the iconic representation of something becomes friendlier. It will ease the parent into to listening to you and to entrusting their child with you.
I honestly actually feel that this is an individual. One particular fist is an individual made up of different facets. And we cannot really make it into a hierarchy. You will see a bit later that each petal develops on the other, but I see all of them as interacting with each other. Of course, a deficit or a lack in one is going to affect the cycle. It's like a ripple effect. So for me, it's not about a hierarchy in terms of what's important. If I have to place it in a hierarchy, for me, it's where it starts off and where it leads on to. But like I said, all of them are interrelated to each other. All of them have equal importance in order to develop as a child and then development as an adult. So we are going to look at the different facets, which are the 6 petals broken down into 4 components. Now you will see that the physical, social are individual domains, whereas the emotional and intellectual are interlinked with each other, and the spiritual and moral domain interlinked with each other. Okay. So when we look at the physical domain, remember in the beginning I said that we start off with the physical being at the base. So of course that is related to aspects of your body, your growth, how you are growing, what you are eating, what you aren't eating, how you are encouraging, stimulating, and motivating your body to grow. Okay, so in terms of general growth and development, if your body is growing in terms of height, in terms of weight, if you can see physical changes in your body, that means that in terms of physical domain, there is definitely an improvement, there is definitely a growth, and that you are developing in that particular domain. Next, we move on to the social domain. And I think for most parents, for most childminders, most caregivers, this is the most important domain because this is something that is not internal. You cannot control who your child interacts with and where your child goes all the time. But this is mostly related to your environment, your child's social circle, who he or she interacts with, where do they spend most of their time. Now, for me, a child spends most of their time, maybe about 8 hours a day at school in a social environment, and very few hours at home. So even though the child will be home in the afternoon or evening, he's already used most of his energetic time during the social domain petal, if you understand. So that means that they are with their teachers, they are with their friends, they are learning new things at school. And this has nothing to do with parental involvement or an internal home environment. This is only related to an external environment. Do we have any questions so far about the physical or social domain? Atiyah, are you able to see anything?
Yes, yes. I'm not seeing in the chat right now. I think people are absorbing a lot of what's being said. Any questions thus far, guys, or any comments?
Nothing so
How,
far.
I like the fourth one, spiritual and moral domain. How spiritually uplifted or devoid we are, and how we behave in society is a reflection of that void we feel spiritually and morally. And
Mm-hmm.
also the abundance we feel spiritually and morally, because when somebody is spiritually fulfilled, they kind of share that. You see that energy comes out, isn't it? um,
Yeah.
and they inspire others. And versus a child who's morally or spiritually bankrupt, they tend out to be very they tend to act out in very destructive ways, in very needy ways, and in ways that kind of makes a adult caregiver, a teacher, um, friends of the parents kind of wonder like what's going on with their child, even if the parent noticed or has not noticed that. Dr. Shahidi has got a question. Kunain, welcome. Please unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Atiyah. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's quite interesting session, and I would like to thank the speaker. The question coming to my mind about social domain is that these days because of all the challenges, COVID or whatsoever, and on top of that, the children addiction to social media. Like it's certainly challenging for the parents to take them out from their worlds of the screens and bring them into real social world. So I would like to get some suggestions on that from the speaker. Thank you so much.
Lovely and excellent question from Dr. Kunain. It's really something that I think every parent is struggling with at the moment, with getting them out of the virtual world into the real world in terms of the spiritual and moral. Nazmeera, you can leave the question to the end and continue, or you can answer now. It's up to you.
Okay, so Dr. Kunen, I will get back to you at the end of the session. I just want to finish my emotional and intellectual domain aspects and then move on to the spiritual aspects. Okay, so when we come to the emotional and intellectual domain, remember now in terms of development, we are almost at the highest point where we are able to think and feel everything that we have experienced in our physical domain and in our social domain. This gives us a self directive to be able to express how we are feeling. Now, as children, it is very, very discernible to see how you are feeling. If they are angry, instantly you would know they are angry. If they're happy, if they're sad. Children are very expressive. So they're not going to hide their emotions or not share it with anybody, unlike adults who are able to put this curtain in front of them and, say something, but actually feel something different. So when we talk about the in emotional and intellectual domain of children, it is very important that we build an emotional and intellectual environment where they are able to think, feel, and express these emotions. A child who is going to lack the expression of emotions is a child who is going to develop into a very self withdrawn shell. Somebody who is not going to be very comfortable sharing, let alone with anybody else, but with the parents or with the siblings, how he or she is feeling. So, very important is for us to be able to foster an open discussion way in which we can promote, conversation with our children, and try and ask them on a daily basis, is something bothering you, how are you feeling today, etc. But we are going to discuss more about the fostering in the next slide. I'm just going to look at the spiritual and moral domain for now, just a very brief overview about it. Like Atiyya said, how we spiritually feel uplifted or devoid, and as a result how we behave in society. Sometimes if you are out with your family, sometimes you will see children misbehaving, and it makes us wonder, do the other parents not, teaching the child manners? But in actual, it has nothing to do with the parents, and most of the time we try and, well, we don't try, we actually do blame the parents for a child's misbehavior. And I think that is so incorrect, because remember, a child is picking up different ideas, different habits from different aspects of their environment, not only related to parents, but sometimes to siblings, sometimes to friends, sometimes to teachers. These things are so unpredictable and unexpected, but yet, because of course we know the parents, or we see the child with the parents, it is natural to go and blame the parents for the way the child is behaving. Okay, I'm going to open up and elaborate a little bit more on the physical domains, the social domains, emotional, and the moral and spiritual. And after that, Dr. Kunain, we are going to answer your question regarding how to foster a non virtual social environment. Okay. Any questions thus far regarding just the brief analysis and overview on the different petals and facets of growth? Atiyah, anything your side?
Not Kunin mentioning, well said, thank you.
All right. And let us have a look now at your physical domain. I'm just going to move this down. There we go. All right. So, how are we going to foster a physical domain is very important. And many a times, when you hear people trying to tell their child, eat sufficient calories, or make sure that you're eating your vegetables and have your water on time, you probably think, oh my god, this parent is OCD, so irritating, I would never do this to my child. But in actual, these kind of things are so important and imperative for us to ensure that our child is getting sufficient nutrients. And when we talk about that, we look at incorporating a diet that would have sufficient calories, ions, vitamins, macronutrients, which are made of your carbs, proteins, and fats, to ensure a boost in your physical domain. Remember, you are what you eat. So if you're going to eat healthy, you're going to grow into a healthy body. But if you're eating something that's totally unhealthy, you're really not going to be that physically healthy. And as a result, your next stage of development is not going to be too healthy either. Another way to ensure growth in your physical domain is, of course, daily exercises. Now, I know as parents sometimes it's difficult to even get your child to complete their homework, but fortunately enough for schools these days that do offer the life skills or the physical education section, which I think has now become compulsory in most countries, regarding the guidance subject or the life skills subjects. These things are really important, because remember, during your school hours, most of the time, teachers are the ones that move classes, whereas the children are form based. So that means that they don't get any time to stretch, to stand up, for blood circulation to flow, or even some breathing exercises. These kinds of exercises ensures that we are taking in, of course, new and fresh oxygen, releasing old oxygen. I think posture is something that's very important. Sometimes you'll see a child slouching like this, or, not sitting properly, leaning like this. And I think posture is very important, because it shows us how you are structured, and posture indirectly tells us about your attention towards something. Okay. Now, I am definitely one of those, but I'm not sure about any of you here. I go for very frequent checkups to the pediatrician for my baby just to ensure that everything is in accordance with a growth chart or a milestone chart to make sure that everything is being reached. So it's very important that we check our child's height, our child's weight, milestones that need to be reached, milestones in terms for babies and younger children. But in a little bit of older children, we're talking about your height, your weight, how you are able to think, respond. And I think in that aspect, we also incorporate speech and hearing therapists. To determine if a child's speech is in order, if there are any speech disabilities or any speech problems that the child is going through. And that is how we ascertain if there are any problems thus far and then able to deal with it in the next step. So that brings us to how to stimulate physical development and physical growth in terms of a child. Do we have any questions on the physical domain?
Nothing yet. I'm just, you know, what we've spoken about now is kind of, as you said, kind of basic knowledge, which we look at parents who encourage this very openly as sometimes being a bit OCD. However, we really need to recheck our thinking, especially now post COVID, because a lot of our children have been in this lockdown mentality, lockdown physical space where they're mostly playing games. Hardly going outside, especially people who are living in apartments and in cities who may not even have a little outside yard for the kids to run around in. So it's even more important now for us to reset our past thinking and ask ourselves, how much are we applying what we actually know?
It's very difficult to break this kind of a stereotype. Remember, like we said just now, that if you are trying to foster this in the open, you are seen as a very I don't know, a dominant parent. And I think sometimes as parents, we do need to be dominant because we are the parents, and I'm not saying we know best, but in comparison to the child, I'm very sure that we know better. So we definitely need to break this kind of a stereotype. Like you say, something very interesting, one of my friends, she has two children that are of school going age, and she initially during the lockdown period she found this quite challenging as to how to motivate her two children to do the online virtual schooling. They were finding it quite difficult. Their attention wasn't there. They used to open up another web browser, play online games, etc. And then she devised a structure. So just the way a child would wake up in the morning, have a bath, change into a school uniform, take the school bag, take the school lunch, and off you go to school, she devised the same structure. And she woke them up in the morning, she bathed them, gave them their breakfast, changed them into uniform, and there the online schooling began. And they would follow a normal school day. During their break time, they would open their school bags and school lunch and, operate and continue as if it's a normal schooling day. She said that since that day, they had continued schooling for the 3 or 4 or even 5 months as if they were really at school.
Yes, it's amazing the behavioral conditioning
Yeah.
that we should really capitalize on. And a lot of times we undermine the amount of benefit conditioning can have. And I personally noticed the same thing with my kids. We had the rule that, by 8 o'clock, you had to have had a bath and dressed up. Um, Even if it was not the uniform. And it really made a difference to the way they approached their schooling when they were doing it online. But incidentally, for those of you who are not in the UAE, online schooling with the government and public schools is operational from grade 6 up to grade 10 at the moment. And the other grades go to school. Which is also a further option for parents. But those children who are not attending school up to this end of this term was the grade 6 to grade 10 band. Yet the government law was that they had to appear on screen in their uniforms. So, yes, even the behavioral scientists that work behind the scenes in the educational department see the merit of that. That take advantage of the conditioning you've already had in your home and in your life. And we, as people from all over the world, can take advantage. How can we create normality and routine and take the best of that for the kids? Sounds so foolish for them because, as you said, we may not know best, but in comparison to them, we're pretty sure we know better. So routine and normality is something that should never be undermined.
I don't think children are very ecstatic and enthusiastic about the online schooling. But perhaps when they realize that they can maybe get to sleep a little bit later and have flexible time and play games and perhaps not so much of homework, I think they decided to take advantage of such a situation, which didn't really work out too well because, like we say, parents are one step ahead of children.
Mhm.
Okay, shall we move on to our social domain?
Yes.
And when we move on to our social domain, we are referring to your company. And of course, company definitely matters. So when we look at our social domain, we are talking about as parents, as caregivers, childminders, or even teachers, we need to ensure that our social environment is positive. Remember, it's a ripple effect. If I'm going to go into a negative environment every day, come back home filled with negativity, naturally I'm going to give off negativity to my child who is going to incorporate this negativity in his or her life and display it. So the environment that we as parents are in is of utmost importance because that fosters and develops the way a child's environment is seen to be. Okay, when we also talk about our social environment, now many countries have segregations and apartheid eras and racial problems. We need to try and ensure that our children work with diverse groups. Because remember, if you have diversity, you're going to interact with each other, learn more things about each other. Unlike staying with one particular cultural or racial group, you are all sharing the same ideas, the same culture, the same religion, and even though you might be learning from one another, I think development and knowledge comes most when you interact with diverse people. So, to foster a healthy social environment would mean to ensure that your child plays in groups with diverse children, which they could learn diverse things. Okay. Another very important aspect is for us to take an interest. Now, many times we as parents are so busy with our own careers, our own jobs, etc., that the child goes to school and comes back, does his or her homework, and the day is over. And I think it's very important for us to take an interest in what's being done at school, what's being done in what happened at school today, who did you have a fight with, who did you have an argument with, just to be there for your child and to show your child that listen, I'm interested in knowing about your day, fosters a social domain and encouragement and development in your child. Remember, it's a give and take relationship. If you're going to offer to your child, he or she is going to take from you. But if you have this closed attitude, he or she is going to feel really, really negative, very isolated, and even afraid to come and ask you for something or to come and share something with you because you always portray such a closed personality towards the child. It's very important that we open ourselves up and we encourage interaction, we encourage our interests in talking to each other and identifying what happened today. Just a little bit of sharing won't harm anybody. And then, lastly, when we talk about kindness, empathy, and sympathy, these are three most basic but most important concepts because if you know what kindness is, you will be able to express this. Empathy, of course, many children, because they are so young, it's difficult for them to understand the differences between empathy and sympathy. And if we talk about empathy, we are talking about trying to feel what somebody else is feeling at this particular point. So basically, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And when we talk about sympathy, we are feeling sorry for what the person is going through at this particular state. So it's important that children understand empathy, kindness, and sympathy so that they are able to relate to people who are undergoing such aspects or such events or experiences. And as a result, they can grow into these spiritually and emotionally well developed individuals as children and teenagers to young adults and then middle-aged adults.
Not only,
Okay.
not only that, I believe that letting children get in touch with exercising the muscles of empathy and sympathy is so paramount to their own personal feelings of happiness and connection to the creator, because it's only when you can truly see another person and their situation that that a child is able to healthily compare their situation and then be grateful and truly appreciative of where they are in life, which then fosters a feeling of abundance within them, happiness and contentment within them, and the respect that they need to develop for the other person's situation. I mean, can you imagine how can a person, any human being, be tolerant of somebody else's life if they cannot understand what that person's struggle is?
Exactly. And I'm not sure, sorry, I'm not sure if you can now see how, each stage, each domain is building onto each other. Once again, the physical and then the social. And once you've established kindness, empathy, and sympathy, you are then able to feel these things for other people, which leads us into the emotional and intellectual part now. So all of them are so interrelated to each other that one literally cannot be separated from the other. You will see like a cycle, how one moves into the other and the other moves backwards into the first.
Yes, exactly as you said, Nasmi, in the beginning, that this is really a petal of the holistic development. And I just like to share from my experience as an educator and as well as a parent of three boys that we shouldn't, as parents, assume that our children understand what empathy and sympathy is. I'd like to personally challenge all of you here on the call today to actually have a discussion with a teenager, and gauge how much they understand empathy. Some children who attend the best of schools, private schools, and whatever curriculum they may be attending, as parents, we sometimes outsource education um, in a way that expects more than what schooling can provide. And we need to take back the reins, and we need to really put a lot more effort into the holistic aspect of the education, and stop assuming that the schooling system, no matter where you are in the world and no matter what school environment your child is or whatever school fees you're paying for your child's education, stop assuming that the schools are providing a complete holistic educational experience for them. Really, we need to take the reins of that into our hands, and gauge how our children are with regard to this, and have these open discussions, because that is when their learning truly gets ignited.
Atia, I totally agree with you. Personally, also being a teacher who was working in South African private and public schools, you would always find parents that would challenge or, talk amongst each other that this particular teacher is not doing her job correctly, or she doesn't really know what she's doing, her specialization is incorrect, etc., etc. And then the COVID pandemic arrived when schools were under lockdown and parents had to foster and take over the teaching. I mean, teachers did the online classes and everything, but it was more the parents who had to ensure that the child is literally doing all the homework. And I think, like you say, we need to change our mindset depending, irrespective of which country you are in. I think teachers are experienced in giving off the knowledge that they are giving, and parents need to understand and ensure that as parents, they can only do a certain bit in terms of their child's life, whereas teachers would contribute equally in a different angle to the child's life.
Definitely. Parents really are the key aspect of bringing it all together, bringing that academic, bringing the physical, bringing the emotional, bringing that spiritual, bringing the social, all together. And really, a lot of parents today, I've noticed in our counseling sessions, coaching sessions, interaction with different people on various platforms, on radio and stuff like that, that parents themselves have become so overwhelmed this year from job losses, economic instability, online working environment, handling online schooling for their own kids while they're working online from home. And a lot has been neglected. And I believe that at the end of 2020, we all really should take stock and decide before making these, commercialized New Year resolutions, what is 2021 really going to look for us in terms of our the stimulation of wellness in our children? Because if we are stimulating wellness in our children, it means we are setting the bar. And automatically, as good parents or good teachers or good whatever, even if you're an aunt, uncle, and not a parent, and look at Mariam, she's a student of child psychology, whatever she's learning here, she's going to, inshallah, apply that in her thought process, in the way she will interact in the lecture room of students, and impact all those people on the newfound way of thinking. So we really have great power in our hands, and inshallah we use these insights in a way that starts to transform society, starting with our life.
Mm, I totally agree with you. 2020 really has changed everybody's lives. Like you said, not only in South Africa, but internationally, people lost their jobs, or even if it wasn't because of the closing down of any particular company or business, people were made redundant because businesses could no longer afford keeping these particular people in their specific jobs. Many people lost their loved ones, very close family people. Many people underwent this particular virus and disease for a particular portion. Might have been a breeze, it might have been a challenging time for them, but a lot of people have experienced a lot of different emotions during this year. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard my radio show of last week, South African based, of course. We discussed that counseling services mostly emerged during 2020. This is when people felt the most need to have somebody professional to talk to, and just to talk about what you are feeling to a professional without the feeling of being judged or the fear of being judged by somebody else that's listening to you is a relief on its own.
Alhamdulillah, I can really say praise to God for 2020 in many ways, because previous to that, and I think we can all attest to this, whether it was a marital problem or whether it was an addiction or any type of personal issue, there was a stigma to go to a counselor or a coach. It's like, oh, why do you need to go to that? Yeah, I'm not mad, or why do we need to go there? And it's so costly and it's so expensive, or whatever. Then an excuse, an excuse, an excuse, all based on a stigma, you know. And I think this time has basically put everybody on a zero. Like everybody's at the same starting point now, and everybody the world over has realized that, mental health, emotional health has taken a huge knock, and it's okay if you reach out, and it's okay to say, you know what, I need an extra um, support here with regard to this or that. So it has destigmatized coaching and counseling, and that really has been something that's amazing for not the industry of coaching and counseling per se, but amazing for the open-mindedness and this stupidity, if I can say the word, the stupidity of the stigma, that one should feel fearful of asking for help. Really, alhamdulillah for that has been diffused.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The stigma that was attached. Firstly, if you tell somebody, why don't you go for counseling? Like you say, the first and foremost response is, I'm not mad. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't need counseling. And if a child has to tell the parent, I need to talk to somebody, parents would often force the child to talk to the parent, and I don't think that is quite healthy, because when you want to speak to somebody, you want to express your emotions fully without the fear of being judged or anything. You just want to open up completely, and most of the time when you are already talking to a counselor or a coach or a professional, you would realize automatically that the answers in what you are telling the counselor, the coach, are already there. You just didn't think about it because you were unable to express it freely the way you are expressing it now. So, like you say, shukr for 2020. It has taken many lives. It has taught us a very big lesson, but also it's destigmatized. It's changed the mindset of people. It's okay to seek professional help. It's okay to talk to people. And I think that's what our job as wellness coaches, as practitioners, as counselors, psychometrists, this is what we are here to do. We offer these professional services with unconditional positive regard.
Alhamdulillah. And just to touch on something you mentioned earlier with regard to a child's social development in getting them to um, interact with diversity and diverse people, more than ever, we have seen, even from a business and economic perspective, whether one is running a home industry, whether one is in a huge corporate environment, that being able to relate to people of all kinds is the way to success, because there is no person on this earth, no matter whether it's Warren Buffett, Tony Robbins, or whoever, Walmarts and the Carrefours or the Pick and Pays of the world, who can say, we only want this type of customer because they're our community and they're our culture and they're our color, and this is the gender we want to sell to. That's impossible.
Mm.
So you have to let our children, especially in this type of the future that they are going to be in, a very, very online marketing and online sales and online interaction environment, that they are able to connect, respect, tolerate, talk to, persuade, convince, listen to, heed advice, understand, and communicate with people from every culture and every diverse background for their own economic benefit and for their own ability to reach some type of stature and respect in whatever community they find themselves in the future.
You know, Atiyah, now that we talk about diversification and diversity, I don't even think socioeconomic status matters now with the entire 2020 restructure. Prior to 2020, when you would talk about demographics and diversity, somewhere along the lines you would see socioeconomic status somewhere feature. This would be one of those aspects that would segregate different groups, like you say, the pick and pays and blah blah blah, all these highty-tighty people. And now with 2020, everybody is equal. Whether you are a CEO, whether you're a director, whether you're a teacher, or even a caregiver, everybody is seen as equal. Everybody equal in their own professions. And there's no more segregations, there's no more differentiations in terms of your socioeconomic status. Everybody is seen as equal, with equal jobs, with perhaps not equal income, but equal personality types. Each and every person is different. Everybody comes and contributes differently, but every person definitely has a personality that would contribute to this kind of an environment.
Alhamdulillah. All praise to God for that. And those of you who are on the call who are in coaching field, teaching fields, and who has knowledge and who have the ability to offer services to others in terms of your, whether even you're an accountant or whether you're a social media marketer, whatever it may be, really, there is no difference between the person having the big office with a city view or an ocean view and glass walls versus you, because when it's on online, it's the screen. It's
Definitely.
just you and the screen. So really take advantage of that. I know we're digressing a bit, so let's get back to that topic. But just to
Okay.
let our kids know that, you know what, seize the day, carpe diem. Let's give them that attitude. This is part of their development.
Yeah,
Stop
yeah.
looking at the stumbling blocks and the obstacles.
No, I think, like we discussed just now, that the social environment is of utmost importance because that is where your child spends most of their day, most of their energetic time. And you need to ensure that this environment is stimulating enough for them to be able to grow and develop successfully. We are going to be moving on to the next facet, which is the emotional and intellectual domain. And this is where we talk about your feelings matter. Okay, as children, like I expressed earlier, it's very important that they have the platform to express their feelings. It's very important that they are expressive, that they feel comfortable to come and tell you that this is wrong or this is right, this is how I'm feeling. And that alone shows that they are able to perceive and experience emotions. Like we mentioned earlier, children who are afraid of expressing their emotions most likely tend to become children and teenagers and adults that become withdrawn in a shell. They most of the I wouldn't say that the case of all introverts, but they would become really introverted in nature and in personality. They keep to themselves most of the time because they are afraid. They have not been given an open communication platform in the beginning by their parents, and as a result, they've become accustomed to not sharing feelings with anybody. So, how to foster emotional and intellectual domains is, of course, positivity. And we know if we think positive, we feel positive. If you think negative, you're going to feel negative. And this is goes back again to wellness and to mindset. If you have a positive mindset, you'll take positivity from it. If you have a negative mindset, you're going to take negativity out of it. Okay? If we look at confidence, remember that confident people uplift others. Now, how do we stimulate? How do we foster confidence? In order to foster confidence, you need to motivate your child. Encourage your child that everything you are doing is good. Of course, the child is not going to do everything perfectly all the time, but this is when you get a chance to direct or self direct the child into the correct manner. So you're going to steer the child indirectly to take the direct path. And this is where confidence in the child builds, that even though I am doing the wrong thing, or even though I did the wrong thing, I am now being directed into correcting it in a better way. Okay. I think another aspect of building emotional development is independence. Now, when we talk about independence, we don't talk about giving independence where the child doesn't have to tell you everything. But when we talk about independence, is giving your child slight freedom to do things, even though he or she will come and tell you, but not to direct everything. Give them a little bit of leeway to be able to take some decisions, basic decisions of their own. And I think this kind of independence will automatically build an environment of trust and responsibility. At the same time, it will teach your child how to become responsible in doing certain things. Any questions for me?
No, for me, for please, guys, you very quiet today.
Ah,
Comments and questions, definitely. How many of you? Let me put out a question to you. Let's get the chat going. How many of you feel that it's okay to have a argument in the house with the kids in good in earshot? That it's okay. They should learn that life is like this and there's arguments to be had. How many of you feel it's okay for parents to have an argument where the children can hear what the argument is about? Just type in the chat. If you feel it's okay, put in okay. If you feel not okay, put in just no, of course. Quickly, let's see how many people actually listening to us. So, how many of you feel it's okay if parents have an argument in front of kids because it teaches them that life is like this and there's ups and downs? Or for whatever reason you feel it's okay. If you think that it's okay if to have an argument in front of the kids, type in yes or type in no. Let's see. What are you thinking? I don't know whether Tasneem, you absolutely was absolutely for. Somebody sent a message to me privately. Which parent hasn't had an argument in front of the kids? Some, yeah, Fazana got not okay. Anyone else? What do you feel?
definitely not. No.
Okay, so I choose to show them it's okay to agree to disagree. Okay, anyone
Mhm.
else? How do you feel? Mariam says no. What are your thoughts other than I like how Tasneem shared that she feels it's okay to show them to agree to disagree, but not an argument. She says no, not an argument. Dr. Abdurrahim says okay. Mariam says she thinks it depends.
Mm.
How about you? Let me pick somebody. How about you, Sister Azra? What about you, Sharon Reinders? What do you feel? How about you, Hajra? Hajra being an ex-principal, got lots of years of experience there. What do you feel about um, having an argument in front of the kids? What about you, Imran? Anyone else would like to say what do you feel about that? Okay, Nazmeera, what are your thoughts on that?
But yeah, for me, that is a no no. Why? Because children are very naive. Remember, what they see is what they are being conditioned. For me, definitely not. Even if it's an argument, you need to just brush it off until the child is gone away, or think about or find a suitable other time to discuss this or to go through this. But for me, it's going to develop a lot of different aspects in the child's mind. Firstly, remember, whatever sometimes takes place at home, a child goes and shares it with the friends. And if you're going to be, doing something like this in front of your children, definitely they, maybe not deliberately, but somehow or the other, it's going to come out in their social circle. And it might not come out as accurately as it's supposed to be. Things might be changed, what they have perceived and the way they express it might be totally different. And that then goes to the parents of the other children. So for me, definitely not. It also creates a negativity. I understand from certain parents' perspectives that I'm reading that talking about it is not a problem, but raising your voice and shouting at each other is not okay. I agree with you. But remember, you're showing that there is disagreement. And naturally, when there is disagreement, children automatically feel that there is a fight. And this is not what you want to show to your child, that mom and dad are not fighting, they are just having a discussion. But I personally feel that this discussion could be put aside until the child is not around or the child is gone to sleep. And like you say, if it really is just a disagreement or a discussion, it's fine. You can discuss it anytime. But there is no need to do this in front of children. That is definitely negative for me. What are your thoughts, Atya?
Um, quite similar to what you're saying. I believe on two camps, and echoing what Mariam said, depends on the issue. For instance, if it's a small disagreement, as for instance, where to eat, for instance, which restaurant to go to, right? If dad wants to do that, go this direction, mom wants to do that. Sometimes we can get a bit emotional about things as parents, as people who are not mature. That's parents are at different ages, also at different developmental milestones of their own as well, at different physical I would say physical stages. Sometimes a person may be very ratty and tired from being up all night. Sometimes a parent may feel very stressed or overwhelmed. So these types of emotions affect how they play out on a day-to-day basis. But if it's something to that effect, what can happen is we can um, realize, first of all, awareness is so important. Be aware of your emotions. When you realize that, you know what, you're becoming emotionally invested in the conversation, then that should be a warning bell for you to stop. Because as soon as you're becoming emotionally invested in a negative way, chances are you're not going to be able to control yourself further in terms of your tone, in terms of your facial expression. And I so agree with you, Nazimira, because kids just pick up on that. They're emotional vampires. They see big eyes, raised voice, oh, trouble. They start to cower inside. And cowering inside gives is fear. And then they're not sure. And so that lovely trip of where to go out to eat, if I use such a random, silly example, doesn't become a pleasant experience for them. So a parent can have a conversation, even if it's not in flowery, hunky-dory, everything in agreement all the time, and disagree on a level where that kids can be involved and say, well, what do you guys think, where should we go, let's see how much time do we have, how far is it, what do we have next. Let them understand, and let it make it an educational experience for them in terms of how to make a decision, or why we'd like to go there, or why we'd like to go there. For instance, however the decision is made, let them see the flexibility in decision making. But as soon as a parent sees and feels, so it's a lot depends on the self-awareness, and that's the responsibility of being a parent. When you realize that you are becoming emotional, then chances are you're not going to be able to control yourself very well. So that's the brakes you should start putting then on that conversation.
And that is why I usually try to, say that even arguments or discussions like these that could lead into arguments, different points and different perspectives shouldn't be discussed in front of children. Because, like you just mentioned now, Atiyah, when you start getting emotionally involved, very difficult to control, and you are already so invested that are you willing to now stop? Because now you've basically, gotten into this framework and you are ready to put down your points and argue and debate about it, and your, like you said, facial expressions, your tone of voice, everything's going to change. So why get into it in the first place if you know that this is the point that it might lead to, and it's going to be difficult for one of us or both of us to be able to stop? So for me, prevent it as much as you can. I just want to comment quickly on Sister Miriam Khan's message, and she mentioned that it's important to give children realistic expectations of how relationships sometimes work, and I totally agree with you, but just not with very very young children, because like we discussed, they are conditioned so differently. They are so sensitive. We need to take every feeling of theirs into account. Yes, with older children, definitely they need to know that arguments take place, disagreements take place, debates take place, and that's definitely normal and natural.
I love how you mentioned that, Nazmira, with regard to younger children, because imagine two kids under the age of 5 sitting in the back seat of a vehicle and parents having a small spat, versus kids who are 13 and 15 in the back seat having the, while the parents are having, so same parents, same spat, same kids, but different age groups. Just play out in your mind when you get to the journey, even if it's the journey was going to the park, what those the kids under 5, how their energy will play out, how their emotions will play out. They may actually bite, scream, hit others at the playground. The 13 and 15-year-old have the ability to switch off. They have the ability to maybe listen to something else or think about something else. They may even have the ability to contribute to the situation by saying, hey, I've got an idea, you know. Whereas little kids don't have that ability. They don't even have the verbal knowledge on how to express what they're saying, to say, you know what, they won't even have the power within them to say, stop, my ears are hurting. So
Mhm.
yeah, very, very interesting to notice the age of the children that one is around when one is having an argument
It's
or a
extremely
spat.
important. Remember, it's all about their sensitivity, how they're conditioned, how sensitive they are to these kind of stimuli, what they're taking in, how they perceive it, and as a result, how they react to it. Sometimes that alone could be a reason why children decide not to become very expressive to their parents, because they've seen another side of their parents among each other now, and they feel that maybe if I tell my mom something, or if I tell my dad something, they're going to react this way, the way they have reacted in that particular situation. So they become a little bit afraid, withdrawn, and as a result, they just decide not to, be any kinds of emotionally expressive individuals.
So
Okay.
insightful, mashallah. I often let people see the impact of how this plays out when they put themselves in that situation. Change the situation in your mind, if you may, audience, respected audience. If you had a boss, okay, let's say you're at work and you had a boss, and that boss was the type of person that you are as a parent, right? Exactly how you react, exactly how you speak, exactly how you handle frustration, exactly how you handle when you're late or things get lost or something is broken, exactly yourself. Imagine if your boss were like that to you. How trusting would you be to go to your boss if something went wrong or you couldn't fulfill or you couldn't do something? How would you feel? And then extend that to, now imagine if two of the senior bosses at work were having a boardroom discussion and ended up in a huge argument, screaming and shouting, and you as a staff member are watching all this, knowing that they are the main stakeholders for the success of this business, the payment of your salary. How safe would you feel? So just going to leave you with that thought. So if your boss was the type of parent that you are now, would you be happy to be in that environment?
I think it's very subjective, very very
That's, yeah, Sabia shared a comment. I believe that the most crucial thing here is that both parents agree mutually to not argue in front of their kids. Yes, yes, mutual agreement. So definitely something that's going to affect the emotional and intellectual domain of children.
So yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna say that it just really depends if both partners, both husband and wife, are, on the same level of understanding. One might be totally ready to argue, and the other one might be a little bit more wary in front of the children. Just depends.
So we've got a message here. Um, a private one, a question. How do you respond to children when they argue and disagree with you? We try reasoning in a calm way, not always effective. The child is 3. How stern should one be to not accept screaming and shouting? That's the one question. And then the other question is, how does one deal with a situation when the one parent continues to argue, even the one keeps quiet? So we've got three very good questions. One was the first very good question was from Dr. Kunain, and he mentioned about how to get kids to engage socially offline and unplug them out of being online. And then we've got the one about how to let the child know that the screaming and shouting is not acceptable. And the third one is, how does one stop the other parent? How does one handle it when one parent continues to argue and the other stops?
Shall we discuss them now, Atiyah? What do you think?
I think so. Let's go for it, and we can continue.
Okay, because we are almost done with our presentation. So let's talk about Dr. Kunain's question regarding stimulating a social environment during the COVID pandemic time, aside from virtual social interaction. Is that correct, Dr. Kunain? Dr. Kunain, are you still with us?
Yes, he's with us. He's just on
Okay.
mute. I believe
Is
that
that
sums up the question. Yeah.
is the question correct? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I personally feel that, with COVID restrictions being a little bit eased in certain countries, and I know the European side, of course, they are on the second wave, and it's extremely risky and dangerous for anybody to step out of their homes right now. And I'm not too sure. Tia, can you maybe share which countries Dr. Kunain from?
He's from UAE.
UAE. Okay. What are the restrictions in the UAE right now? I
Well,
think it's a bit.
we're not under lockdown, but it is sometimes a bit difficult in terms of the new way of living, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So of course, 2020 has changed so much, and we are not able to go out as we used to before. And if we do go out, there are so many restrictions. You've got to wear a mask. You've got to sanitize all the time. It's very, very irritating as time is going along, and I think people are actually getting frustrated of this kind of living. But personally, if I had to stimulate a social environment for my child, I would invite a handful of children at home, or try to gather them in an area where they could have a picnic. Now, I believe UAE has some beautiful, beautiful parks. The same for South Africa. We've got quite a few restaurants, quite a few places that you are able to gather these children. And of course, all these entertainment areas in the different countries have now adapted to restrictions and limitations with as to how many people they can allow in these kind of entertainment centers and areas. So I would suggest, devising such plans, taking your child out, inviting a few close friends of your children, ensuring that they interact with each other. Aside from that, things that would happen virtually, you have already been under lockdown since March, and I think to foster more technologically, socially, I social discussions and social conversations is really not going to work anymore. People need to interact with each other. You need face to face interactions. So I would definitely suggest to arrange certain meetings. You could foster and hold something at your house, perhaps a small party, the things where children can get together. How about some kinds of reading activities, so that would stimulate some sort of education among them? I'm not sure, Atia, your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe, in terms of boosting children offline, it's something even I think I also struggle with in getting the kids to get physically active. And if one is not able to go out with friends, at least I think we should start putting on some Zumba or some type of fun activity on use the technology that they like to activate them into moving their bodies, activating different parts of their brain, jumping around, reoxygenating. Movement brings the flow of endorphins into the body as well, which gives them that smile, that glow, that happy feelings that they require. And then they start realizing that, there's a little more than just me playing games on the screen. I should do something active with my family. Have a little picnic, go outside with your family. And if it's teenagers who don't want to be with the mom, dad, and grandparents, then as you say, invite a friend or two, and go to the same park and let the kids have their own picnic a few meters away, and make it a no device picnic. Let's just go, if it's boys, go kick a ball, or do something like that, take a jog on the beach if you're in a safe country where you're able to do that. Just let's be creative. As I said before, we really need to do a reset and start re-looking at how are we going to now manage 2021. In 2020, we all basically been, okay, what's happening, and figuring it out and keeping our heads afloat, just trying to keep afloat. But chances are 2021 is going to be very similar. So what can we now, how can we take charge of 2021? How can we let, instead of just life happening to us, how can we happen to life? How can we make our life for 2021?
Yeah, yeah. I think children have become so addicted to iPads and tablets and laptops and this entire technology during 2020. It's very difficult to get them rid of this particular habit and lifestyle. It's going to definitely be a challenge to get them adjusted back to a normal social environment. In fact, many children I know, when schools had reopened and they had to go back, they were quite unhappy about it because they've become so used to, flexi time schooling and not schooling every day, not having to wear a school uniform, following just certain amounts of hours, no, not much homework. And it was a challenge for them to actually go back into a school routine and to adapt back to a schooling life.
We're going to be having a discussion, an in-depth discussion on the digital drugs that devices are in our kids' lives by a wonderful Emirati woman, Naima Musaji. She's of Amal Counseling, the UAE. So within the month, we'll be having a session on that particular to digital drugs. So I would really, really recommend that everybody joins on that and share that post of that far and wide, because a lot of parents today are combating this addiction that their children have become so accustomed to. And ourselves, some of us are constantly with the phones and phone games, that even our children feel that the parents are abandoning them because of how much of um, um, how much of time parents are stuck into their phones.
Yeah, yeah. Like we say, you what you are modeling is what your child is picking up from you. So you need to model a positive outlook and everything positive so that your child doesn't follow any kinds of negativity. Whatever you're going to do, your child is going to do. You need to role model accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to that second question.
Mhm.
Reasoning with the 3-year old that's screaming
Oh,
and shouting. How do you stop that in fostering their wellness?
I think a 3-year-old is so sensitive and he is growing into an environment where he feels that he can become much, much more expressive. And perhaps he feels that because he is so comfortable, because he is comfortable with the both of you being the parents and probably he's being the youngest in the family, he can get his way. So a little bit of shouting and screaming and demanding is going to work. But of course, this sort of takes a toll on most parents because they are unable to deal with demands, they are unable to deal with the screaming and shouting. And so it becomes a cycle that becomes really difficult to break. And for me, reasoning in a calm way, like you say, is not always effective. But another way that I could think of when I used to work with children is to sit down, give the child pen, give the child paper or some sort of colors, and ask them to jot down what exactly is the problem. Instead of screaming and shouting, we call this draw therapy. And draw therapy is very, very important because what a child is trying to tell you in terms of shouting and screaming at you, he will be able to portray it to you in terms of his drawing and the colors that he makes use of. In terms of answering your question, Imran, how stern should you be to not accept screaming and shouting? I think parents set the tone. Parents set the standards, and you need to make it very clear to your little one that shouting and screaming is not going to work with you. He can, of course, come politely, naturally, and ask you for what he wants or tell you what's the problem, but that you are not prepared to accept any forms of screaming or shouting.
I
Your
like
thoughts?
what I advocate as well, a very, very beautiful advice, Nazmeera, with regard to drawing therapy and giving children a paper and let them go crazy with how they want to express their feeling. But obviously, you would have to demonstrate that with a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Of
You'd have to take
course.
a piece of paper. A person, Imran, I think, that asked a question. You'd have to take the paper and say, "I feel so happy," and draw a big yellow sun. Or then, "I feel so angry today," and then maybe just take a red or whatever, and let the child you model that for the child, and then say, "How do you feel? Choose a color." They may not want to. They may want to scream and cry and continue, or they may do that. For a child who continues screaming or crying in that manner, what I found often worked in my family counseling practice is using props, using a type of a play therapy. So, for instance, you can have two little stuffed animals, and you can play out. So, if you have two stuffed animals, imagine one is the behavior that you'd like your child to portray, and one is the behavior that depicts what your child is portraying. So say your child's name is Muhammad or Hamza, whatever, Hamza, and Hamza says, Hamza screaming and shouting, okay? One teddy bear would be Hamza screaming and shouting. So imitate exactly how Hamza's carrying on with the teddy bear. Let the teddy bear be acting like that. And then say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't like being spoken to like that." And then have the other teddy bear who will speak nice to say, "I really want an ice cream. May I have that ice cream before I have my food?" And then you'll say, "Oh, I like how you ask me so sweetly. Of course, you can have that ice cream, but we must have food first. You're such a wonderful boy to listen, and you love to listen, and you love to take care of your body. And yes, we can have food and ice cream." So the child who's watching that realizes very quickly that the teddy bear who's screaming and shouting doesn't get anything. But the teddy bear who's speaking sweetly gets the attention of the parent and gets both things. It will take practice. It's not a magical panacea that's going to fix things immediately. Remember what we spoke about in the beginning. I'm not sure if you were here at the beginning, Imran. The behavioral conditioning that um, that a child is used to takes a while to develop, and it takes a while to undevelop. But you have to be consistent in the approach, have 2 or 3 tools in your toolbox in how you manage that tantrums. And I would recommend you read a book called Toddler Taming by Dr. I think it's Dr. Christopher Green. I think it's Dr. Green, yeah. But anyway, the title is Toddler Taming. I think you'd really benefit from that as well.
Shall we look at Sabiha's question?
Yep. Question 3. How does one deal with a situation where one parent continues to argue in front of the kids?
I think it's very important to explain to the parent before any argument could begin that if such an event occurs, if a topic occurs where you and I can already see that we are disagreeing, let's decide to discuss it perhaps when the child is asleep or the child is playing outside, because of course, this kind of an argument or even a discussion sometimes, because of our different expressions and the way we express with our tones of voices, sometimes can just let the child misunderstand that an argument is actually happening. So before any such thing can occur, I think it's important for us to discuss with our spouses that in the event that something like this is going to occur, shall we, let it rest, put it aside, push it away for now, and when the time comes, when it's the correct time, when the child is not around, we can perhaps discuss it. I don't think any argument is more important than the mental well-being of our child. In terms of how our child is going to grow, how our child is going to perceive our discussions, what he or she is going to think about it, and as a result, how they're going to react to it. I think it's very important for us to establish this kind of an understanding at the very onset that if something like this is going to occur, let us put it aside for now. Your thoughts?
My thoughts, I would like to hear the thoughts of the panel on this one. How do you feel? What advice would you give on on this question? Those of you, um, uh, Dr. Zakaria there in Riyadh, he's working in this field as well. What advice do you have if one parent is arguing and the other has stopped? How does one stop? How does one deal with the parent who refuses to stop arguing, who's going on and on? Any thoughts on that from the panel? Please share that as well with us. You can raise your hand or put it in. For me personally, it goes back to the the mindset at the beginning. I mean, if you get into a vehicle and you want to travel somewhere, you know where you're going. You know that you're getting into the car to go to the shopping mall, or you're going to another city, or you're going on holiday. You know what you need to take with you. You need to take your shopping bags, or you need to take a suitcase full of clothes. If you're going to Hawaii or you're going to Iceland, you know what you're packing in the suitcase, the type of things that you need. Likewise, in a marriage, in a family, in a gathering, one needs to know, where is one going? What do you want at the end of this? Even if it's just your day, you're going to the beach or the park, or you're having a family day, or you're having a movie night. What do you want to achieve at the end of that? So a lot of us live in a state of just reacting. Life is happening to us. Whereas if we start looking at our life as in, we can control the outcomes a bit by knowing what our outcomes are, what is the outcome we want, then with that type of a navigation, that type of a GPS in your mind, you can circumvent those arguments. So if you know you've got a very argumentative partner, you know what kind of triggers that partner, and that partner may not be mature enough in handling their emotions or stopping themselves. Know that if you are able to, and know not to step on the landmines. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that have a discussion when your partner is not in aggressive and not in an argumentative mode. When you had some time out, kids may be asleep or gone to school, or you take a drive somewhere personally and say, I heard this, or I came across this conversation, or I read this in an article. What are your thoughts about this? How do you feel? I know things are important, and I know things need to be panned out and played out, and we need to have discussions, but I do feel that we're taking our kids in the wrong direction in terms of their wellness. As you're saying, Nazmeera, no conversation is more important, or no argument is more important than the child's well-being. So having that kind of a discussion is very important, and lots of parents don't actually have that discussion. We assume the other parent is on the same page. We assume the other partner is thinking the same and has the same mission and vision. No, we should really stop assuming and relook at missions and visions. Even companies do that. They relook at their mission and vision. They relook at their stats. They relook at their sales. They relook at their staffing. So we too need to relook at our resources. We need to look at, how are we managing, how are we coping ourselves, and what do we want, where are we going.
You know,
So
as parents, whatever we are trying really works. So there is no parenting style that we could really judge and say is correct or is incorrect. And like you say, Atiyya, reflection is definitely not a problem. It's perfectly fine to go and reflect because you are human. You can go back and you can see, am I doing this correctly or am I doing this incorrectly? And I just want to share a small little experience of mine. My little one is now 10 months old, and it's been 5 days now since he is being like a little parrot. Whatever my husband and I say, he repeats after us. So already at just 10 months, he is able to repeat certain sounds. And of course, if you are going to have an argument or something, he's already perceiving information as in positivity and negativity. For example, my husband calls him a pumpkin. And when he says pumpkin, already he starts laughing. He knows that there's some positivity associated with this word. And it's so important because their brains are so small, they are so young, but already they can interpret what is good, what is positive, and what is bad or negative. In terms of when you are shouting or screaming, he will cry. When you are calling him with words that he likes, he will laugh. Already this is so important to note that this is one of the important steps of development, to perceive something as positive or negative.
definitely, children have a natural intuition and are very, very much energetically connected at a young age. So, yeah, subhanallah, I think we really need to, again, the same thing I'm saying again, capitalize on what we know and start applying it, so that our children are really holistically developing the positive mindset, and we stimulating the wellness inside them.
And I think, just moving on to our second last point here under emotional and intellectual domain to stimulate, like we discussed earlier, an open door policy for discussions that is to ensure a healthy parent child relationship just on a daily basis, to ask the child how they are, how their day has been, and if there's anything that they would like to share is really important, because this can ensure that what the child is able to share these kind of feelings with the parents, and the parents also going back up takes an interest in the daily actions and the daily activities of the child. And like we said earlier, you are your child's role model. Whatever you are going to do, your child is learning from that. So remember, you have to try and portray a positive outlook so that your child can also intake and portray a positive outlook. Many parents, become really dominant in their working environment, and as a result they don't share much time with their children, or they don't have enough time to play with the child, and this sort of distances the child from the parent, in that the child feels afraid to go close to the parent, because the parent doesn't really show that much of affection or time for the child. What do you think, Atya?
Definitely. We really need to give that eye contact. We need to put the phone down. We need to put the laptop down and give quality time. Now, quality time does not have to be hours and hours. For a child who's also very busy and wants to play and's got things going on, even 10 minutes or even 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes every 2 hours, if a person is working at home, may seem so little. And it really, we think about it, what is 5 minutes? But 5 minutes of complete, put your phone down, put your laptop down, and just sit and talk to the child, eye to eye, listen, see, hear his sound of his voice, hear the tone, look at the facial expression, and let them hear your sound and tone. And share that, oh my goodness, I feel so tired today. I had a difficult long meeting. Let them hear you as a human being. Let them feel you. They'll be more likened to being caring of you as a parent and more in tune with you as a parent when they see that you're also human, that you also feel sad, that you also feel happy, you also feel tired. So that is the way they can gauge what is normal human behavior.
Dear, shall we move on to the last domain that we are talking about here?
Yes, definitely.
And that
We
is
have gone
the
over time.
spiritual and moral domain. Remember when we spoke about being spiritually uplifted or devoid affects how you behave in society in general. Now, when we talk about our morals, we talk about educating our children on the differences between what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. And I think this is where we can answer Imran's question also about where to draw the line. You need to show your child that your screaming and your shouting is definitely unacceptable, and that you as the parent you are in charge of the way you control things and the way the child is supposed to behave. Also in terms of guiding them and setting personal standards of humanity, and this goes back to, I think it was the social domain, where we talk about kindness, empathy and sympathy. These are personal standards of humanity. If you are able to understand these three aspects, then of course you can say that you can function in a social environment without any problematic issues or experiences. And then we talk about establishing in depth personal relations. This is, of course, how you feel, how you think, how you feel, and as a result, how you behave in society. Negative feelings will automatically allow you to behave in a very distant manner or in a very negative manner in society. Whereas if you have positive thinking, positive feeling, you will behave in a manner that will foster a lot of love, affection, care and kindness.
This ties into the question. I think this will be the last question as we've run out of time. How do you help? Sister Hajras asked us, how do you help your kids when your kids try their bit to become friends with cousins and friends, but they don't respond nicely?
Sorry, Atya, can you repeat your question, please?
How do you help your children when they try to befriend their cousins and other friends, but those cousins and friends don't respond very nicely to their invites to befriend them?
I think we need to establish first and foremost what is making these friends and cousins not respond to your child in actual, because I'm not saying anything is wrong, but in order to ascertain what the problem is, we need to see why are they not accepting these kind of things. Secondly, I honestly feel that there is no problem with cousins not being friends, because sometimes, family members don't really want to be friends. But when it comes to other people, I don't think there is a problem in accepting invites. Perhaps you could start off with inviting one or two people instead of cousins or a group of friends, and then from inviting one or two people you could build on and try and add on the third person and the fourth person, and then try and enlarge your child's social circle.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, that is definitely something that I would also recommend, that start with one hadra. Let the child befriend just one person. Again, it's quality, not quantity. And if we find that there's a actual reason why that person doesn't want to befriend our child, then we really need to reflect very carefully what is it that may be preventing that harmony happening. Is it logistics? Is it too far? Is it timing not suitable? Is it that environment that the meeting at? Sometimes parents might say, you know what, we don't want our children to go to somebody else's home because we cannot control, who's in the home, whether those parents have been in contact with COVID. It may just be fear based as well. So very, very delicate and sensitive situation now in terms of COVID and things like that. And then again, the type of friend that we may be choosing, perhaps that particular person is not somebody that one wants to, that might not be a suitable friend, might not be compatible to your child. So that's also something to consider as well. And one of the ways to mediate that, if all these things are not a problem and it may just be laziness on the part of the other person because they're too addicted to the online games, then get involved with that friendship through the online. Use the online as a stepping stone. For instance, they could play an online interactive game together instead of talking, where both of them are playing something together and participating as opponents or as a team, and play that online for a few times and then set up a play date at the park or something like that. um, Slowly try something. That's I would suggest as something that one could possibly use. Another question: how to explain the difference between spirituality and religion to children?
Yeah, let you start with that one and I'll add on.
Okay, lovely question, Dr. Shahidi. Spirituality and religion. Um, Interestingly enough, when I used to live in Al Ain, there used to be a family, and my son, who was 8 at the time, came to me and said, "Mom, what's an atheist?" I was like, "What a question from an 8-year-old! What's an atheist?" And I said, "Where did you hear that?" So he says, "No, I can't remember the name of the child, was from Europe, one of the neighbors. That boy said that he is an atheist. He doesn't believe in God." I was like, okay. And I said to my son, "Well, what did you say?" So first I gauged what is the level of understanding of the child, right? And what are their thoughts. My child was far off the mark with what he understood an atheist to be. I mean, he was not even there, not even close to understanding what an atheist was. And we used that opportunity to then explain to him that, there are certain people in life who see the signs in the world and realize that uh, if a bird dies, that they don't have, we as human beings don't have the ability to bring that bird back to life. No matter which hospital we take it to, no matter which medicine we give it, that bird cannot come to life. And then speak about, do you know anybody who's passed away? It may be a grandparent, it may be a parent of a friend, it may be whoever. Everybody knows somebody who's passed away. He said, we are not able to bring them back. Only the person who gave, the being who gave life has the ability to take life and give life. And that will say, well, who's that? So if your child has not been influenced by religion, if your child is not in any religious environment, then that would become to the topic of who God is, right? And then it would go into, well, certain people believe in God and live their life so much and they make God so important that they follow everything that God says. And then you speak about religion, so you can go to the past and say, before, long ago, there was these great prophets, And a prophet is a messenger, and you can speak from the biblical transitioning. So you can speak about Moses in the Torah and say, and that's where the Jewish people, they believe in the Torah, and they, and then you can speak about the Christians and how they believe in Jesus Christ, and they have their certain scriptures, and these are the teachings. And you, as a parent, should know a little bit of teachings from the Torah and the Bible, to be able to show the thread and the similarity between the religions around you. And then you can speak about Islam, and you can say, and these call God Allah, and they have a prophet that came with that scripture, and this is the Quran, and all these books have the same universal uh, commands, that you shall be a good to and righteous person, that you shall not hurt, you shall not steal, you shall not kill, you shall not be immoral. These are religions. People who do follow religions do certain rituals. They pray in certain ways. Some people fast. Some people pray 5 times a day. Some people go to the synagogue. Some people go to the church. But all of them have one thing in common. They believe in a higher God who they will return to in an afterlife. Then you can go on to spirituality. You must say, and there are some people who believe that there is a being, there is a controller of the universe, but they're not sure about religion. They're not sure about how they should pray and whether they should fast and what they should do and how they should worship him. But they are very spiritual in that they believe that there is a universal source of all creation, and they also, most of the time, live universal values. So that would be the most simplest way to explain the difference between religion and spirituality.
So
Spirituality is coming from the word of spirit. You know that you are a soul in a body. Your body is a vehicle, it's traveling. The person who is spiritual focuses on spirituality in the sense of energetic connection to the universal source of all energy, the creator, but they don't always have a name for him. And religion is
like
doing the
to
exact.
add on, I honestly feel that spirituality makes you ask yourself questions such as, who am I? Who am I without materialistic things in this world? Where do I come from? Like Atiyya, you mentioned, it's the soul that you're talking about, separated from the human body and separated from materialistic things. You ask yourself, who am I? Where do I belong? Aside from the worldly issues, where do I go? Where do I belong? What do I actually believe in? And yes, when it comes to religion, we all have the fundamental aspect of believing in a God. Now, all of us, of course, follow different religions. Some are Muslims, Hindus, etc., Christians, Jews, and each one believes in a specific kind of God. But of course, all of us do believe that there is God and somebody that controls the entire universe and the world. Everything that happens with the will of God. But when it comes to spirituality, for me, it's taking aside worldly things and taking aside, materialistic things, and asking yourself, apart from all of these, aside from all of these things, who am I?
And where am I going?
And where am I going? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the very interesting things in that, for those of you who want to stay on, I know we've concluded this aspect, but for those of you who want to continue with that discussion for 5 minutes, a very good question to ask our children as they're growing up, especially as they're teenagers, is, are religious people spiritual? Because we kind of determined that spiritual people may not always be religious. They may not choose a religion, but are religious people spiritual? And that then brings up the discussion, especially as your children are teenagers and are reaching, post puberty, when they are now responsible for the the rituals, and they're responsible, or they should be responsible enough to know that, there's a certain things that need to be done, whether it's their prayers or their fasting, and you're not, as a parent, hovering above them, around them, and telling them exactly what to do at all times. They need to really ponder that, and how spiritual are they in their religion? Do they just do the rituals because it's a ritual, or why are they doing that? So that's the growth then that you stimulate in your child, in terms of the spiritual development. Dr. Abdurrahim Zakaria, you've got your hand up. Please unmute. Welcome to speak.
Yes, well, thank you very much. It's very interesting. I just would like to comment on the point This to break the barrier between the children and the parents. Actually, I think you mentioned something very well, that the interaction between the child and the parents to have a common, play, or they can play together. I would like to comment in this part because even actually, in Islam, it's sometimes the time is breaking down. Let's say from year 1 to 7, okay? You have to deal with your child as to have a common things. It's not like question and answers or orders. You just teach him everything by playing. You see, I mean, have some common things actually to play with. So it will not be an order, but it will be something like common interest for both. So the child will start to learn indirectly, okay, with the things actually he like. See, we know that after 7 to 14, you have to be as a friend. So when the child is become, let's say, 9 and 10, you already become, familiar with him, and he familiar with you. You have something in common. So even he will, as the speaker mentioned about the role model, or the what is called the uh, you know um, how he will be a role model for the child. So I think he will be continue with you in all these actually years. I know from 14 to on he will be dependents, and you will be as friends. Sorry to say that again. From 0 to 7, it's the time just to play with the child. You see, so give him all the things, all the message you want to send to him by playing. I think from 7 to 14, uh, teach him the moral, how he can behave, how he can speak with the people, how he can be very nice to respect, the visitors. Okay, I mean, give him the whole rules and regulations with a nice way. After 14, let him become as your friend, because he already actually, digest all these things. So you will not lose his connection, even if he become really, teenage, or he left to another country or another place. All the things you really put it in his actually his life, or his mind, or his soul, will be continue. Sorry to have a longer time, but this is the area I was very little interested to share with.
Alhamdulillah, Dr. Zakaria, thank you for sharing that. And really, it's such a wonderful, wonderful prophetic advice that we really should apply more often. I believe our presenter has to leave. We've taken up so much of her time. Nazmira, Jazakallah khairan for the lovely anecdotes, the advices, the thoughts, the ideas, the presentation, and of course your energy and your bubbly smile that has really brought a lot of benefit to everybody on the call. Subhanallah, we thank you from Coach Middle East, and inshallah, everybody who's here, the recording of this will be out on YouTube. And if you do require it directly, you can just contact me via the WhatsApp. It's on our website, www.coachmiddleeast.com. And we look forward to having you again next week, Saturday, where we have another exciting guest and another unusual first discussed topic that will bring benefit to your life, inshallah. Take care, everybody. Jazakallah khairan for being here. You, our guests, are the most important. As I always say, and sounds like a joke, but it's not. If it weren't for you, we'd be talking to ourselves. So, Alhamdulillah, thank you for joining us. Nazmira, last words, and you can be over and out. I know you've got rushed to another appointment.
Jazakallah so much, Atiyah, and to all the audience that came, just to take some knowledge and information from us. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. It was really an honor presenting to all of you, and I really do hope that I was able to share some of my knowledge in terms of holistic development and how to stimulate a positive environment and wellness mindset among children. Thank you once again.
Definitely, thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ma salama, everyone.